The vast command ship of the Varaxian Confederacy hovered silently above the asteroid belt of the Sol system. High Admiral Day stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor of the observation deck. His yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the third planet from the yellow star. Earth, he said, testing the strange word. So this is where the humans live. Science Officer Ju approached with a data tablet, her steps quiet and measured. Our scans are complete, High Admiral. The humans have achieved basic space travel but remain confined to their solar system. They have primitive orbital stations and have only visited their own moon. Day made a dismissive gesture. Show me their weapons. The large viewing screen filled with images of human military technology. Tanks, fighter jets, nuclear missiles. Day clicked his tongue against sharp teeth. Primitive indeed. Their most destructive weapons would barely damage our smallest vessels. Intelligence Director Kang stepped forward from the shadows where he had been quietly observing. Unlike the other officers with their confident postures, Kang seemed tense. High Admiral, if I may speak freely. Day nodded impatiently. Our initial scans reveal something unusual about the humans. They spend much of their resources fighting each other, yet they advance technologically at an alarming rate. All the more reason to subjugate them quickly, Day replied. A species that wastes time fighting itself poses no threat to the Confederacy. Kang persisted. That is precisely what concerns me. Despite constant conflict, or perhaps because of it, they adapt with remarkable speed. Their weapons technology has evolved more in the last 100 years than ours has in 1,000. Day turned to face the intelligence director fully now, irritation clear in his stance. Are you suggesting these primitives could challenge us? Us who have conquered 53 star systems? I suggest only caution, High Admiral. The command room fell silent as Day returned his gaze to the blue planet on the screen. After a long moment, he spoke. The Council has already approved the annexation of this system. Its mineral resources alone justify the operation. Prepare the demonstration fleet. 3 days later, Day watched with satisfaction as a small group of Varaxian warships approached the human space station. The crude structure orbited Earth slowly, solar panels extended like fragile wings. Open a channel to all Earth communication systems, Day ordered. Communications Officer Sue nodded. Channel open, High Admiral. Day straightened his uniform and began the speech he had delivered to dozens of worlds before. People of Earth. I am High Admiral Day of the Varaxian Confederacy. Your world now falls under our protection and authority. Surrender your military assets and prepare for integration into the Confederacy. Resistance is... High Admiral, Sue interrupted, confusion in her voice. They've cut our transmission. Day blinked in surprise. Impossible. No primitive system can block our communications. They didn't block it, Tactical Officer Yoon reported. They simply stopped listening and are broadcasting their own message across their planet. Show me, Day demanded. The screen switched to show a human female standing before a blue backdrop with the words, United Nations visible. Her face was calm, but determined as she spoke. Citizens of Earth, an alien force has entered our solar system and threatened our sovereignty. The Security Council has unanimously declared this an act of war against all humanity. All nations are activating defense protocols effective immediately. We will not surrender. Day laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the command deck. They think they can fight us? Very well. Show them the price of defiance. He gave a single nod to Tactical Officer Yoon, who pressed a sequence of commands. On the screen, a beam of energy lanced out from the lead Varaxian ship, slicing through the space station. The structure broke apart, debris scattering into the blackness of space. Now they understand our power, Day said with satisfaction. Send the standard terms of surrender. For several hours, the command deck was quiet as they waited for Earth's response. Kang stood at a monitoring station, his expression growing increasingly troubled as he reviewed data from the planet below. High Admiral, he finally said, the humans are not preparing to surrender. Day turned sharply. Explain. They are mobilizing all their militaries globally. And Kang paused, double-checking his readings. Their weapons factories have increased production by 300% in just the last 2 hours. Before Day could respond, Sue called out from communications. Incoming transmission from Earth, High Admiral. The screen showed a different human now, a male in a military uniform decorated with medals. This is General Kim of the United Earth Defense Force. Your unprovoked attack has united humanity as never before. You have declared war on humans. We accept. And we will show you why that was the greatest mistake your species has ever made. The transmission cut off abruptly. Day stood frozen, a cold feeling spreading through his chest as he looked at Kang, whose earlier warnings now hung heavy in the air between them. 3 weeks had passed since the destruction of the space station. High Admiral Day paced the command deck of his flagship, his clawed hands clenched into tight fists. The initial amusement at humanity's defiance had long since vanished, replaced by growing concern. Report, he snapped at Fleet Commander Sung, who stood nervously by the tactical display. The humans have not followed any expected pattern of response, High Admiral, Sung said, his voice carefully controlled. They have made no attempts to communicate or negotiate. Instead, they have... He hesitated. Speak plainly, Commander. They have disappeared from our sensors, sir. Their military bases appear abandoned. Their naval vessels have submerged to depths our scanners cannot penetrate. Their aircraft remain grounded in hardened shelters. Day's yellow eyes narrowed. They hide like cowards. With respect, sir, I do not believe they are hiding. Sung pulled up a new image on the main screen. This was taken by our orbital sensors 6 hours ago. The screen showed a massive underground facility that had not appeared on their initial scans of the planet. Hundreds of humans worked with purpose, converting what appeared to be mining equipment into something else entirely. What are they building? Day demanded. Before Sung could answer, a deafening alarm blared through the command deck. Red emergency lights flashed as the ship's computer announced, "Warning, unknown projectiles detected, impact imminent, impossible." Day roared. Their missiles cannot reach orbit. The ship shuddered violently as something struck its hull. Then another hit, and another. Tactical Officer Yoon frantically worked her console. They've modified their mining lasers, sir. They're using their satellite network to focus and amplify the beams. Another violent shudder rocked the ship. Sparks flew from damaged consoles as crew members were thrown from their stations. Shields at 60%, reported the systems. Officer Intelligence Director Kang appeared at Day's side, his face grim. They adapted their existing technology for warfare. I warned you about their capacity for innovation under pressure. Silence, Day hissed. Launch fighters. Target their major cities, show them the cost of resistance. The Varaxian fighters streaked toward Earth's atmosphere, weapons charged. But as they descended, hundreds of small craft rose to meet them. The crude human vessels should have been easy targets, but they moved with unexpected agility. What is happening? Day demanded as he watched half his fighter squadron vanish from tactical displays within minutes. The humans, Kang said quietly, have repurposed their entertainment devices, what they call video game controllers, to pilot their defense craft. Their pilots have spent lifetimes training in simulated combat without realizing it. A lieutenant rushed onto the command deck, breathing hard. High Admiral, the scout ship we sent to their moon. It's been captured. Day turned slowly, disbelief etched on his scaled face. Captured? By primitives? Yes, sir. The humans had a hidden base there. They used some kind of electromagnetic pulse to disable our systems, then boarded and overwhelmed the crew. 6 months passed. The Varaxian Confederacy had sent reinforcements, expecting to crush the human resistance easily. Instead, they found an enemy that grew more dangerous by the day. Fleet Commander Sung stood before a group of newly arrived officers in the briefing room. His once pristine uniform now showed signs of hasty repairs. Understand this? He told them, his voice hard with experience. The humans do not fight as we do. They do not follow tactical doctrines or established protocols. Where we seek efficiency, they embrace chaos. He activated a hologram showing a Varaxian cruiser being swarmed by tiny human vessels. They call this a wolf pack approach. They sacrifice ships to identify our weaknesses, then exploit them ruthlessly. Sung changed the image to show a captured Varaxian weapon being dismantled by human engineers. And they learn, faster than any species we have encountered. In a secure laboratory on Earth, General Kim watched as scientists reverse-engineered Varaxian technology. The captured scout ship had provided invaluable insights into alien propulsion systems, weapons, and, most critically, their communications network. How soon? Kim asked the lead scientist. 2 more weeks, the woman replied without looking up from her work. We've almost cracked their FTL drive principles. Once we do, we can adapt our existing rockets. Kim nodded and turned to his aide. And the other project? The decryption team has broken into their battle fleet communications. We can now listen to everything they say. On the Varaxian flagship, an emergency meeting was underway. Day faced the projection of the Confederacy Council, trying to explain the unexpected situation. The humans have shot down 3 of our capital ships, Council Member Han said, her voice cold with disapproval. How is this possible? Before Day could respond, alarms blared once again. Intelligence Director Kang burst into the room, his usually calm demeanor shattered. Hi, Admiral. The humans have launched their first faster-than-light vessel. They've already destroyed our outpost in the next system. Day stared in shock as the tactical display confirmed the unthinkable. Somehow, in mere months, the humans had not only understood Varaxian technology, they had improved upon it. We have gravely underestimated these creatures, Day whispered, more to himself than to the Council. This is no longer a simple annexation. We are in a war for survival. 2 years into the war, the grand meeting hall of the Varaxian Confederacy buzzed with tense voices. The 7-member High Council sat at an elevated table, their ornate chairs a stark contrast to the grim mood that filled the room. Director Kang stood before them, no longer just an intelligence officer, but now Chief Strategic Advisor, a position created out of desperate necessity. The situation continues to deteriorate, Kang said, his voice steady despite delivering catastrophic news. Humans have expanded beyond their solar system. They now control 17 of our former outposts. Counselor Jin, the oldest member with HFY, pale blue scales that had lost their luster, leaned forward. How? How could primitives achieve in 2 years what took our civilization centuries? Kang activated a holographic display showing a timeline of human technological development. We fundamentally misunderstood their nature. Their history of constant warfare wasn't a weakness. It was evolutionary pressure that selected for rapid adaptation. The display shifted to show captured footage of human engineers working with alien technology. They moved with purpose, taking apart Varaxian devices and reassembling them in new configurations. They don't innovate as we do, Kang continued. We perfect a technology before implementation. Humans deploy imperfect solutions immediately, then improve through rapid iteration. High Admiral Day, who had lost much of his former arrogance, spoke up from his position at the side of the room. They also fight differently. The Bakari slaves we stationed on Outpost 4, they joined the humans. This news sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the hall. The Bakari had been a conquered species for 300 years. The humans offered them freedom and alliance, Dai continued. Now they fight alongside humans, sharing their knowledge of our systems. Counselor Min, who had remained silent until now, stood up. Her commanding presence immediately silenced the room. We must face reality, she said. This war was a mistake. We should sue for peace while we still control our core systems. The suggestion was met with angry protests until Min raised her hand for silence. The alternative is continued loss. Our supply lines are stretched. Morale is collapsing. 3 more species under our control have begun resistance movements inspired by the humans. Aboard the UES Defiance, Admiral Hyun reviewed the latest battle plans with her officers. The ship, once a civilian vessel hastily converted for war, now featured a seamless blend of human ingenuity and adapted alien technology. The Proxima Centauri system is key, Hyun said, pointing to a star map. Once we secure it, we'll have a direct route to the Varaxian homeworlds. Commander Lee, her Tactical officer looked concerned. Their defense fleet there is substantial, at least 30 capital ships. Hyun nodded. Which is why we won't be fighting alone. The door to the command center slid open, and a tall reptilian figure entered. The Bakhari ambassador, Tel, moved with a grace that belied his massive frame. "My people are ready, Admiral," Tel said, his deep voice rumbling. "For 3 centuries we built and maintained Varaxian ships. We know their weaknesses better than they do." Hyun smiled. "And today we have even better news." She turned to her communications officer. "Tell them." The young officer straightened proudly. "The Zol Collective has agreed to join our alliance. They're sending 60 ships to support the Proxima assault." This news was met with a moment of stunned silence, then cheers erupted across the command center. The Zol Collective, while never fully conquered by the Varaxians, had maintained strict neutrality for millennia. "How did you convince them?" Tel asked after the celebration quieted. "We didn't," Hyun replied. "They watched. They observed how we treat our allies as equals, not subjects. They made their own choice." 3 weeks later, the Battle of Proxima Centauri became the turning point of the war. The combined human, Bakhari, and Zol fleet crushed the Varaxian defenses through tactics that no military doctrine could have predicted. In the aftermath, as Hyun walked through the captured Varaxian command base, she discovered something unexpected: a vast archive of human history that the Varaxians had compiled since first contact. "They've been studying us all this time," she told her officers as they examined the files, yet they never understood what they were seeing. Commander Lee looked up from a terminal. "Admiral, listen to this assessment from High Admiral Day, dated just before the war. Humans waste resources on competition among themselves. This inherent weakness will make them easy to conquer." Hyun shook her head. That was their fundamental error. They saw our conflicts as weakness, not realizing that competition drove our advancement. Every war, every struggle taught us something new. Back in the Varaxian Council chamber, Director Kang presented the devastating news of the Proxima Centauri defeat. The once proud council members now looked haggard and defeated. "High Admiral Day's fleet has been destroyed," Kang reported. "Day himself has been captured. The human-led coalition now controls the direct pathway to our home systems." "How? Many species fight with them now?" Counselor Jin asked quietly. 5 major species and elements of 12 others, Kang replied. "More join them daily as news of their victories spreads." Counselor Min rose once again. "The council has reached a decision. Director Kang, you will lead a diplomatic mission to the humans. We must end this before we lose everything." Kang bowed his head, but his mind was already made up. When he met the humans, he would not just bring terms of surrender. He would bring everything he had learned about Varaxian defenses. The war had shown him which side deserved to shape the future of the galaxy. 5 years into the conflict, Director Kang walked quickly through the dimly lit corridors of the Varaxian Central Command, a data crystal clutched tightly in his hand. The once busy hallways now stood nearly empty, a telling sign of how far the Confederacy had fallen. Guards barely glanced at him as he entered the High Council chamber. His position granted him access everywhere, a privilege he was about to use one final time. Inside, the 7 council members argued loudly, their voices echoing off the vaulted ceiling. They fell silent as Kang approached. "The human-led coalition has taken the Dreva system," he reported without preamble. "Our last major shipyard is lost." Counselor Min's scales had dulled to a pale gray, a sign of extreme stress in Varaxians. "How long until they reach our home worlds?" 3 weeks at their current pace, Kang answered. "Perhaps less. Their faster-than-light technology now exceeds ours by a significant margin." Supreme Counselor Han slammed his fist on the table. "This is unacceptable. We ruled this sector for 2,000 years before these humans crawled out of their caves. And yet here we are," Min said quietly. Han's eyes narrowed dangerously. "There is one option we haven't considered. The World Breaker." A heavy silence fell over the room. The World Breaker was a forbidden weapon, capable of shattering a planet's crust. The Confederacy had built 3 such devices but had vowed never to use them after witnessing their horrific power in testing. Kang stepped forward. Supreme Counselor, using such a weapon would only unite the galaxy against us. Already 23 species fight alongside humans. Deploy the World Breaker, and that number will double overnight. We have no choice, Han roared. We deploy it, against their main colony on Tau Ceti. Once they see their people die by the billions, they will understand the price of pushing us further. Kang looked around the chamber hoping to see opposition, but the other council members lowered their eyes. The decision was made. That night, alone in his quarters, Kang activated a small communications device he had carefully kept hidden for months. A quantum entanglement transmitter, impossible to detect or intercept. This is Stardust, he said quietly, using the codename given to him by human intelligence. The Confederacy plans to deploy the World Breaker against Tau Ceti within 48 hours. Evacuation must begin immediately. Aboard the UES Hope, Admiral Hyun received Kang's message with grim determination. Within minutes, she had assembled her command staff. All ships in the Coalition fleet will divert to Tau Ceti, she ordered. Contact every transport vessel within range for immediate evacuation. Commander Lee looked up from his display. Even with every available ship, we can only evacuate 20% of the colonists in that time frame. Hyun's face hardened. Then we need another option. What do we know about this World Breaker weapon? Science Officer Park, a brilliant physicist who had helped reverse engineer much of the Varaxian technology, studied the data Kang had transmitted. It creates a cascading reaction in a planet's mantle, Park explained. But the trigger mechanism requires precise positioning. If we can intercept the weapon before it reaches optimal range. Can we disable it? Hyun asked. Park hesitated. No. Once armed, attempting to disable it would trigger detonation. But her eyes widened with sudden inspiration. We might be able to redirect it. 2 days later, the massive Varaxian weapon ship emerged from faster-than-light travel near Tau Ceti. Its crew expected to find a vulnerable colony planet. Instead, they faced the largest coalition fleet ever assembled, over 500 ships from 24 species, formed in a defensive sphere around the human colony. Inside the weapon ship's command center, the Varaxian captain received an unexpected transmission, a live feed showing their own homeworld. This is Admiral Hyun of the United Coalition, came the calm voice over the channel. We've evacuated Tau Ceti. We also know exactly how your World Breaker works thanks to Director Kang, who joined us yesterday. The camera panned to show Kang standing beside the human admiral. We have positioned a quantum mirror array in your system, Hyun continued. If you fire your weapon here, the energy signature will be captured and redirected to your own homeworld. The choice is yours. The Varaxian captain stared in horror at the screen, then at the activation controls before him. Supreme Counselor. Han's orders had been clear. Fire the weapon regardless of resistance. His hand hovered over the launch sequence, trembling. Captain, came Kang's voice. The humans knew about the World Breaker 3 months ago. They could have used this mirror technology then, against an unprepared target. Instead, they waited. They gave us a chance to make the right choice. Back in the Varaxian Council chamber, an emergency broadcast showed the weapon ship powering down its systems. Supreme Counselor Han watched in stunned silence as his final gambit failed. Counselor Min approached him slowly. The military has withdrawn their support. The fleet commanders refuse to continue a war we cannot win. Traitors, Han whispered. No, Min replied. Survivors. It's time to admit what Director Kang told us from the beginning. Starting a war with humans was the greatest blunder we've made. As she spoke, the first ships of the human-led coalition entered the Varaxian home system, not firing weapons, but broadcasting terms of surrender that were far more merciful than anyone had expected. The grand ceremonial hall of the Varaxian capital city gleamed under soft blue lights. Once a symbol of Confederacy dominance, today it served a different purpose. Beings from 27 different species filled the room, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic life. At the center stood a large round table where the peace treaty would be signed. Admiral Hyun represented the human forces, her simple, dark uniform standing in stark contrast to the elaborate diplomatic attire of other species. Beside her stood Director Kang, now officially recognized as the liaison between humans and Varaxians. Supreme Counselor Min approached the table. The once mighty leader of the Confederacy now wore the plain robes that signified her transitional authority. Behind her, former High Admiral Day followed quietly. As a prisoner of war who had been treated with unexpected dignity, he had been granted permission to witness this historic moment. Today marks the end of the Varaxian Confederacy, as it has existed for 2 millennia, Min announced to the assembly. Her voice carried strength despite the circumstances. And the beginning of something new. She placed her hand on the treaty document, a blend of traditional paper and digital technology that accommodated the signing practices of all species present. I expected humiliation, Min said quietly to Hyun. Or extinction, not cooperation. Hyun's expression remained composed. Revenge is costly, peace is profitable. We learned that lesson from our own history. As Min signed her name, murmurs rippled through the gathered representatives. The treaty's terms were unlike anything expected. No reparations that would cripple Varaxian society. No military occupation of their worlds. Instead, integration into a new galactic organization where all member species would have equal standing. After the ceremony, Day found himself standing alone on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The sounds of celebration drifted up from below as citizens embraced the relief of peace rather than the expected hardships of defeat. Trying to understand it still? Came a voice behind him. Day turned to find Kang approaching. Yes, he admitted. By all logical measures, we should be facing extinction. The humans have every reason to destroy us after what we attempted. Kang joined him at the balcony rail. I've spent years studying humans. Their greatest strength isn't their adaptability or their technology. What then? Their capacity to overcome their own nature, Kang said. They could easily have become the new conquerors, replacing us as the galaxy's tyrants. Many of their military leaders wanted exactly that. But they chose a different path. Below them, a group of human children played with young Varaxians in a courtyard, teaching each other games from their respective worlds. 10 years passed. The galactic cooperative flourished, uniting former enemies in shared prosperity. On Earth, a special academy had been established where representatives from all species came to study and exchange knowledge. In a sunlit classroom, Professor Kang addressed a group of students from 12 different worlds. The topic today, the psychology of conflict and cooperation. The war changed everything we thought we knew about ourselves and about humans, Kang explained. The Confederacy believed strength came from control and domination. Humans showed us that true strength comes from diversity and adaptation. At the back of the classroom sat former High Admiral Day, now simply Scholar Day. After years as a prisoner, he had requested permission to study human history, a pursuit that eventually led to his release and current position as a researcher. Professor, asked a young Bakhari student, if the Confederacy had not attacked Earth, do you think humans would have eventually discovered us anyway? Undoubtedly, Kang replied. But the manner of that meeting might have been very different. Sometimes I wonder if our aggression actually prevented a worse outcome. How so? The student pressed. By attacking them first, we gave humans a clear enemy to unite against, Kang explained. Had we met them during their own internal conflicts, they might have seen us as just another faction to compete with. Instead, we forced them to see themselves as a single people. After class, Day approached his former intelligence director. I've been studying Earth's ancient wars, he said. So many parallels to our own history. Kang nodded. Which is why the treaty works. Humans understand the cycle of conquest and revenge because they lived it themselves for thousands of years. Together they walked to the Academy's central courtyard, where a monument stood, not celebrating victory but commemorating all lives lost in the conflict. Around it, representatives from every coalition species had planted trees from their homeworlds. Do you regret defecting? Day asked suddenly. Kang considered the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary, but I believe I served the true best interests of our people, even against their wishes at the time. He gestured to the thriving garden around them, where species that had once been mortal enemies now worked side by side. The Confederacy would have eventually fallen with or without human intervention. All empires do. But thanks to humans, we fell into something better rather than into chaos. Day nodded slowly. As you said in your first report, which I foolishly ignored, starting a war with humans was the greatest blunder we ever made. He paused, watching a mixed group of children playing nearby. And perhaps the most fortunate mistake in our history. Kang smiled at the contradiction, one that humans with their comfort with paradox would have appreciated perfectly. The universe, he said, is full of unexpected teachers.